evening. I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Elk Grove Unified School Board at 6:07 p.m. and announce that the board met in closed session and that no actions were taken. Today's meeting is being video recorded and will be available on the district's YouTube channel. Blue cards are available at the table just outside the boardroom for anyone who wishes to address the board. If you wish to address the board, complete a card and hand it to a staff member at the table to our right. Please be sure to indicate whether the matter you wish to address is on the agenda or not on the agenda. If the matter is on the agenda, we'll assume you wish to speak when it comes time to address that item, and we'll hold your card until then. First item at our meetings is always the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to call up Robert and Damica Alonso from Arnold Adriani Elementary School, our education partners who will be highlighting today, and my colleague Mr. Carmen Forcina will be telling us about these wonderful folks. Also come up, please, Mr. Mark Vieira, principal.
Good evening again. Arnold Adriani School is honored to recognize Mrs. Damica Alonso and Mr. Robert Alonso as our education partners. Mr. and Mrs. Alonso are the parents of 3 children at Arnold Adriani: Nicholas, Ashley Nicole, and Victoria. The whole family has been an integral component deeply woven into the fabric of the school. Mrs. Alonso was elected as PTA president in the 2016-17 school year, and she has not rested since. She and her PTA team host some of the most amazing events for students and families, and all with a singular focus: to provide an amazing environment for families, for students, and staff. Mrs. Alonso does not do anything small. She puts her heart into every event, yet continues to rise to the challenge no matter how tiring the task is or how difficult it may become. By default, Mr. Alonso came as part of the package. Lucky for us, he did. Mr. Alonso could be seen regularly at the setup and teardown of any of the school functions. Most recently, he was up on a ladder hanging stars from a fishing line to transform the multi-purpose room into a starry night of Paris for our school dance. Not only are Mr. and Mrs. Alonso an invaluable component of the extracurricular programs at Arnold Adriani Elementary School, they are also collaborative members of the educational process that's dedicated to the success of all children. The Alonso family holds their children's education in high esteem. Nicholas is a voracious reader. Ashley Nicole is a model of academic perseverance, and Victoria's strength is in math, while she is a key contributor with student discourse in the classroom. The Alonso family is preparing their children to be future leaders of the 21st century while supporting the school to do the same for all children. Their commitment and dedication to all facets of educating the whole child is commendable. On behalf of the Elk Grove Unified School District and the Arnold Adriani Elementary School community, we thank you for your ongoing partnership and your commitment to excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Alonso.
Please stand. Hand over your heart. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So don't walk away. Mr. Forcina's on his way down there to give you a small token of our appreciation. Would you like to say anything? Do you have anything you want to share with us? Thank you. We appreciate you. have another round of applause for our education partners. Next up, we're going to have our high school student representative reports. With us tonight are Cosumnes Oaks and Laguna Creek High School. Let's start with Cosumnes Oaks.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Charis Espinosa, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. My name is Armand Shergill.
And my name is Maya Moore, and we are representing the Mighty Wolfpack. We would like to first shed light on our Wolfpack Performing Arts program. Advanced Theater attended the Linnea Festival on February 2nd at Folsom Lake College. At the festival, Wolfpack students competed in musical theater, monologues, duo scenes, and one acts. CO placed in 3 out of these 4 categories. Veronica Valejos won gold in her command performance. Raimundo Valejos won silver in musical theater. Jalen Smith and Malia Lawson won silver in their duo scene. And our one-act play, Radium Girls, won silver as well. Wolfpack Theater will be putting on Thoroughly Modern Millie, which opens April 13th, and Honk Jr. beginning May 10th. We invite you all to attend the plays as well as our VAPA Gala Awards Night on May 9th.
On February 22nd and 23rd, leadership organized a student input day for students to voice their concerns on matters affecting our school. Maya and I had the pleasure of being leaders and participating in the event, and we received valuable input that we will use to improve CO. Members from our Students' Rights Movement, a student-led organization on campus focused on improving the quality of education and lives of students, also came to the event and were able to voice their concerns.
The Wolfpack has been achieving academic success. Nearly 37% of our senior class has achieved 3.75 GPA or higher in the past 3 terms and will be attending our annual block party. They will receive their block letters and a certificate. 22 seniors received the Elk Grove Regional Scholarship last March, totaling $33,000. Another member of the pack was selected for the Coca-Cola Scholarship, being one of 150 students chosen out of 157,000 applicants. 2 additional members of the Wolfpack qualified for the National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. Most recently, the Wolfpack has been preparing for the CAS testing, which takes place the week of April 16th.
On March 9th, we had our 5th annual Sportsorama. This is an event where students celebrate teamwork, creativity, and athleticism. Over 100 students participated in themed class teams and in events such as tug-of-war and crab soccer. There were also individual class competitions, such as an obstacle course and arm wrestling. The main objective of the event is to focus on working together and having fun with your peers. All classes performed entertaining skits as introductions to the event, and in the end, the seniors narrowly beat the juniors with their Lion King theme.
Our activities director, Mr. Mason, attended a leadership conference on February 26th through March 2nd to present on our school's progression. Among the many topics discussed with the directors, Mr. Mason described how our ASB program brought together clubs such as Spirit Crew, Leadership, and Cheer to support the Wolfpack at the annual Winter Band Concert this past fall. As a group, Leadership established inclusion as the word of the year, for we are all striving to unify and create bonds among the student body. Also discussed at the conference was the Senior Thank You event ASB seniors participate in. The purpose of this program is for graduating seniors to reach out to any teacher or faculty member, whether elementary school or middle school, who has made an impact on their educational career. Students are able to thank them with a surprise visit to their classroom. All teachers play a significant role in students' early development and are able to see how students have progressed. And this is a way for teachers to realize the impact they have made on students years later.
Link Crew held their annual Link Sync competition on Thursday, March 15th. Link Sync is a musical performance where groups of students and teachers lip sync to their favorite songs. The event was held in our MP room, and students were able to come out and watch their friends perform. The winner of the competition this year was a boys group called the Egg Rolls.
The rally team here at CO took a twist of academics and game shows at our first Olympics rally to kickstart our spring break. Students are able to participate in games such as Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, Family Feud, Kahoot, and Clue Boom. We had guest appearances from teachers from each department to assist students in the game questions.
The 2018 spring athletic season is off to an outstanding start at Cosumnes Oaks High School. We currently have 370 student athletes participating in spring sports. This will be the last season Cosumnes Oaks participates in the Division II Capital Valley Conference. Next year, we have been realigned to the Division I Delta League. The Wolfpack is optimistic about earning many league titles this spring as we end our time as a member of the Capital Valley Conference.
This month, CO is preparing for the production of Every 15 Minutes, which takes a proactive step in educating local high school students about making mature decisions regarding alcohol. With senior ball and graduation around the corner, students will be involved in a conversation about the repercussions and consequences related to driving under the influence. This two-day program encourages students to think about drinking and driving, personal safety, and bringing awareness to making mature decisions when lives are involved.
Thank you for your continued support, and remember that the strength of the pack is the wolf.
And the strength of the wolf is the pack. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Nice job, Sio. Next up, let's have our representatives from Laguna Creek High School.
Good evening, President Chairs Espinoza, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Mrs. Atmos. My name is Jared Husing.
And I'm Haley Rankin, and we are pleased to be here to tell you all the exciting things that have been happening at Laguna Creek these past few months.
As far as our academic achievement, we are proud to announce that our feeder school, Harriet Eddy, and ourselves, Laguna Creek, have received official authorization for the Middle Years Program, MYP. Back in February, Laguna held its annual Spring Academic Recognition Night, where those with at least a 3.6 GPA are recognized for their hard work and dedication. Those who attended, despite the presence of sports and other commitments, had a chance to win raffle prizes ranging from Dutch Brothers gift cards to free prom tickets. This was the last academic recognition night for the school as a whole, but it was only a precursor to the Senior Awards night on May 10th. Tomorrow, April 4th, Laguna is holding an International Baccalaureate Project Night. Here, our MYP sophomores present their personal projects, and the full diploma seniors present their Community Action Service, or CAS projects, to those who are interested in attending. I would like to extend the invitation to all of you in order to see what our dedicated students have worked on. The sophomores are presenting at 5, and the seniors are presenting at 6. We hope to see you guys there. Laguna Creek Sports Careers Academy, SCA, has been very busy lately. The Academy has internships at Dignity Health, a sports medicine competition in Southern California, and the Health Occupation Students of America program, or HOSA, which is a competition down in Anaheim. HOSA takes place later this week, and we wish all of our participants well. Our Manufacturing Production Technology Academy, MPTA, and our Green Energy Technology Academy, GETA, have continued building their tiny homes for homeless veterans that we've been reporting on for the past 2 years. In fact, they just completed the first one and are continuing their project on the second. GETA also just placed second and third for their hydrogen-powered car competition in Northern California. This was their first time at the state level.
On March 14th, Laguna Creek Social Justice Club helped put together the school walkout. Students were allowed to walk out of their class and out to the quad to honor the lives that were lost. Perusa Lagas, one of the members of the club, gave a heartfelt speech, and the other members helped to read the names of the 17 lives lost in the Parkland shooting. After each name was read, everyone helped participate in saying, "Never forget." Afterwards, students were able to sign up at tables to pre-register to vote, sign letters to Congress, and send notes to the families affected by this tragedy. From March 18th to the 21st, Laguna's campus was visited by WASP, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, had 7 members touring the campus to observe the amazing programs offered strength of ours is the incredible school culture that we produce. With the end of winter sports, we welcome spring sports. Swim, men's volleyball, men's tennis, softball, baseball, and track have begun. Men's tennis has been on fire lately with an overall record of 9-3-0. Baseball had their annual Wrigley Field game recently, and many students, staff, and parents went to go cheer on our Cardinals. Laguna recently had students compete in a science Olympiad. They placed 7th out of 32 and won 4 medals. They're happy to see their huge improvement from last year and are excited to compete again next year. The Drama Club recently had their spring play, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Crowds went wild with laughter every night of the performance. This play was difficult for the cast because it had audience involvement and required plenty of improv. Nevertheless, it was a huge success and people left with a smile every night. Next week on April 14th, we have our junior prom and senior ball. The class of 2018 and 2019 are excited to dress up and dance the night away at the library in downtown Sacramento. On April 20th, the seniors are leaving town so they can attend the happiest place on earth, as they waited 4 long years for the opportunity. The seniors are excited to spend the day at the park filled with friends and their favorite Disney characters. With the year coming to an end faster than some would like, and for others not fast enough, the seniors are preparing for the end of the year activities. Of these include Senior Sunset and the Goodbye Rally. Seniors grabbed snacks, blankets, and music to enjoy the sunset at Wackford Park just down the street from our school. At the rally, the seniors enjoy one last gathering and prepare to cry at the end of their last day of school.
As I am a senior and this is my last presentation, I would like to thank you for allowing me this privilege to present to you over the course of the past 2 years. I would also like you to know that I will be furthering my studies at the University of California, Davis, majoring in cognitive neuroscience. Once again, thank you for your time.
Congratulations. Thank you for the great report, students. Let's also recognize the principals of these fine schools. Ms. Maria Osborne is in the back there for CO. And Doug Craig is here on behalf of Laguna Creek. Thank you, students. You may be dismissed to go tackle that pile of homework. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the Project AWE, which is Agriculture, Water, and Waste Management and Energy in the Environment recognition. It will be presented by Ms. Kathy Hamilton and assisted by my colleague, Bobby Singh Allen.
Good evening, board members, President Charis Espinoza, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I am here tonight to ask you to recognize students who have participated in a logo designing contest in collaboration with one of our community partners, the Sacramento County Regional Sanitation District, also known as Regional SAN. Regional SAN has given us a 2-year grant. We're in the first year of it with the opportunity to extend it for at least a 3rd year to develop curriculum and field trips for elementary students and work-based learning opportunities for high school students in order to expose them to the variety of careers that are available in utility-related fields, including the sanitation district. The activities will take place at the Regional Sanitation District's Buffer Lands Complex, which you've probably driven by hundreds of times. It's off of 5, it's off of Franklin Boulevard, it's north of Laguna Boulevard and south of Cosumnes River Boulevard. That great big space of land out there. It's a wildlands, really. It also is a historical site. It's the old Nicholas Dairy. It's the old Sims Ranch. And so that's where the agriculture comes into this project. So that's my general introduction. We're very fortunate to be able to employ program specialist Patty Sapula. Patty, did you go far away? Yeah. Oh, there you are. Okay. Patty, come on over. So Patty's going to tell you a little bit more about this contest and then recognize the students and their teachers for participating.
Well, one of the great tasks that I have in my job is involving high school students. And so I've gone out to all of the career tech education programs to give work-based learning opportunities to the kids to help me get the dairy up and running for educational field trips. And so the first thing we decided to do was create a program brand, and that's the name Project Awe. So I approached graphics arts academies and programs and asked their students to engage in a contest to create a brand new logo for us. And luckily, we have 2 teachers that took on that project, and I'd like you to recognize them. Miss Lorna Miller from Franklin High School.
I think she couldn't make it, but we do have Miss Albiani representing Franklin High School.
And also Miss Abby Wright from Consumnes Oaks High School. Second. So we had tremendously talented students designing these logos. And the very difficult task of narrowing it down. We were able to select 3 finalists, and I'd like you to join me in recognizing them. I'm going to ask that the students come up with their teacher to receive their certificate. We also have a gift for them that Ms. Hamilton will pass out. It is a copy of a very highly sought after graphic design book that was recommended by their teachers, so they're going to get that. Here are 3 finalists from Franklin High School. Gabriel Shane Aguirre. And next we have from Consumnes Oaks High School, Ethan Morales. And also from CO High School, we have Kyler Fan. Now, these 3 students didn't just get to be finalists. We asked them to submit revisions of their original ideas. So each of these young men came up with at least 3 new revisions that varied on their original design. Then we had to look at those and try to select a winner. It was very, very difficult. Our new logo is going to adorn our program booklet, as well as our website, signage out at Nicholas Dairy, and just be used for eternity. So we're having some technical difficulties. So I'm going to show you our new logo.
I'm going to ask you to pause really quick. Parents, family, feel free to come on up to the front of the room if you want to get a better picture. Don't be shy. You can come right up to these tables in the front.
So this logo represents the agriculture, water, energy, and the environment. And the winner, the designer of this logo, is receiving the same book as everyone else, but he is also getting an hour professional consultation with a graphic design artist who's going to go over some career advice with him, as well as take a look at his portfolio and help him be in the best position to continue on in this field. I would like you to congratulate Mr. Kyler Fan, the designer of our new logo. Thank you very much.
All right. Are we done? Congratulations, students.
Thank you all.
And thank you, teachers. Let's have another round of applause for our winners. Our next item is our resolution for National School Library Week, which will be presented by Mr. Mark Cerruti. That wasn't enough. Okay.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I'm very pleased to bring to the Board of Education a request to approve Resolution Number 63, proclaiming April 8th through the 14th, 2018 as National School Library Week. Annually, National Library Week is celebrated throughout the month of April, and libraries host special events to highlight the unique role libraries play in the people's lives. And this year's theme is Libraries Lead. Celebrations occurring across the nation during Library Week include National Library Workers' Day and National Bookmobile Day. This evening, we ask that special recognition is extended to Elk Grove Unified School District libraries during the week of April 8th through the 14th. It's essential to continue our acknowledgement of their valuable contributions and recognize all library workers, including librarians, school support staff, and several others who make our library services possible for our students. And with that, I request your consideration of approval of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Cerruti. I want to call for a motion to adopt resolution number 36, proclaiming April 8th through 14th as National School Library Week. Moved by Mr. Madison, seconded by Ms. Singh Allen. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we are moving on to public comment. While we go through these three individuals, we've got time if there's anyone else wishing to submit a blue sheet. First up, Mr. John Gatchett.
Good evening, board members. My name is John Gatchett. I'm a father of a kindergartner at Edna Beatty Elementary School. Up until March 16, 2018, her teacher's name was Ms. Rhonda Davis. I'm an attorney. My wife's a physician. My mother's a retired elementary school teacher from Yuba County. Both my wife and my mother volunteered on a regular basis in my daughter's class. For the last 2.5 weeks, my daughter's had a substitute teacher. Ms. Davis has been out of the classroom due to a work-related dispute with the school district. And this is a time when kindergartners are preparing to move into first grade. Edna Beatty is a year-round track. So basically, we now have a month and a half to get these kids ready for first grade, learning how to read and doing math. And you're moving the teacher at this time. On March 20th, 2018, we drafted a letter to the superintendent and copied Edna Beatty, setting forth our concerns and our outrage that Ms. Davis has been moved from her classroom. We've heard no response from the district. We don't understand how a teacher as gifted as Ms. Davis can be removed from her classroom towards the end of the year, and the district and the school district's backup plan seems to be just to have subs cobble together a lesson plan for the last 2 months of the year and giving our children short shrift, my daughter and her classmates. We want Ms. Davis back in her classroom. We don't understand why this has taken 2.5 weeks to resolve. We previously believed the public school system could serve our child's educational needs. My wife and I are both products of public school. Before we went to the University of Pennsylvania, we were public school kids, and we graduated and we went on to an Ivy League institution. Our strong beliefs in the public school system are waning each day as we watch our daughter and her classmates' education be damaged because Ms. Davis' removal from her classroom, which unfortunately is happening at the end of the school year, as I reiterate again, as we're getting these kids ready for first grade, when they're learning how to read and when they're learning how to do math. We implore you, board members, because we did not receive a response from the superintendent, to look into this matter and get Ms. Rhonda Davis back in her classroom at Edna Beatty Elementary. She's in the C-Track kindergarten program. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gatchett. Next up, Ms. Allegra Taylor. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you for allowing me some time with you this evening. Let me apologize in advance for leaving early. I am catching a flight out tomorrow to D.C., but I thought it was important to be here tonight in the climate that we're dealing with today. And so I had a question. Is the district providing a space for healing for what's happening in the community with the African-American children at the school levels? You don't have to answer that right away. The other thing I want to say is, in the event that you do not have that space available, we want to let you know that there is going to be some community healing space available for the African-American families and or students that you may serve this Saturday. Please stand by via Facebook. We'll make sure somebody get the information to you as to the time and location of where that's going to be. The flyer is being prepared now. We've come together with the network of mental health providers that's going to be available for healing and dealing with what's happening in our community. With that said, I also want to talk about restorative justice. As I look at a report about suspensions in the district, I see here that your average suspension is at a 13.2% rate, yet the African American students are at 25.9% rate. That seems to go right along with what everybody is protesting about today. So with that said, I want to know what are the plans to change this. I want to know how it is that this district is going to start catering to the needs of the students in your district. As you can see, and as we've stated, we're fed up with the inequality and the unfair treatment of our children. And we are demanding that you all do something about it. Just because there hasn't been a slew of people coming in to sign up for the district for volunteer work, what I need to put you on notice is that training is in the process. We don't jump at doing anything. We do research. We find out what the problems are. We cross-track, and then we properly train. Because when we come into your schools, we want to make sure that we're not only supporting what it is that our students need, but we're lining up with what the rules are. However, with that said, we want to know what you're going to do about this.
Thank you, Ms.
I
Taylor.
hope that you would take the time to, even though this is late notice, I would hope that you would take the time to invite the African American students and or families to take time to participate in this community healing event that's specifically for that group of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Superintendent, can we have someone follow up with Ms. Taylor to be sure we get information on that event on Saturday?
Yes, and for the record, Lorene, I'll make sure that Lorene has the information and we'll get it to you. I am leaving tomorrow. I'll be gone for a week, but I look forward to talk to you guys when I get back. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Superintendent, that someone gets back to her with respect to where we address the suspension and expulsion issue. Since we can't engage in a back and forth, I can't provide any answers to that right now, so thank you very much. Next item, next speaker is Ms. Lorene Pryor. Good evening.
Glad to be back with you tonight. Lorene Pryor, Black Youth Leadership Project. I'm just going to echo kind of what Ms. Taylor was talking about in terms of the suspensions and expulsion rate here in Elk Grove Unified School District. It was brought to my attention last week that the reports that I had submitted had been talked about while I wasn't in the room, so I just wanted to clarify a few things. The report that I submitted was entitled, "Get Out Black Male Suspensions in California Public Schools," and I quote, "A number of districts have large numbers of black boys who are suspended at least once. Some of these districts include Sac City, LA Unified, Elk Grove." So when I made my comments about there being a problem in Elk Grove Unified School District, I wasn't just coming off the cuff, I actually read it. Additionally, it says the statewide suspension rate for black males is 3.6 times greater than that of the statewide rate for all students. So we do have a problem. And it's evidence, and I know Allegra talked about the 13.2 being the average that was for Valley High School, but the suspension rates are 25.9. You can take a look at Elk Grove High School. The average rate is 7.1%. Black students are at 17.4%. And so I would submit that if we took a deeper look into those suspension rates that are actually in Control F of your LCAP, if we took a deeper look at those suspension rates, we would find that they are mostly black boys that are being suspended at disproportionate rates in this district. And I do have a copy of this for you if you just wanted to look at it. I pulled it off the CDE dashboard. So my question to you is, what are Elk Grove's goals for lowering suspension rates? And not just what you said in the LCAP in Control F, because this report that is from EdSource, California tops in suspension reform, but not properly targeting disparities. And here it says, of the 50 districts that he studied, only 26 set specific goals for subgroups of students, including students of color and those with disabilities. On this report, students with disabilities, which I believe overlaps with black students, is disproportionately higher. So I would like you guys to take a look at this from the CDE, and then I would like us to have an honest conversation about what's going on in Elk Grove Unified School District. Because in order to fix a problem, we have to admit that one exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Okay. That is everyone I have for regular public comment. No more? Thank you much. So I'm going to close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Or move?
I move.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we have another blue slip coming on up. Right, okay, go.
Okay. You want me to call for that?
Or make the motion.
I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 22.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. So, just to clarify, there was an abstention from item 2. Otherwise, that passed unanimously. Thank you. Next is the Educational Equity Strategic Plan, which will be presented by, it says Sue Larson on here. That is not who's walking up here.
Thank you so much. As you can see, I am not Sue. My voice is a little challenged today, so please excuse me. I was watching the women's NCAA championship game on Sunday, and I got a little excited.
What happened?
She was modeling for her daughter, she told me.
I was running around the house screaming because it was exciting, and she was doing the same. So thanks for having me again back today. Thank you. So this is part 2. We were with one another a couple weeks ago, and really tonight we're going to be digging into goal areas 3, goal areas 4, 5, and 6. And just a few reminders before we dig into those foundations. You know, our work is really centered around our learning vision here and our learning system in Elk Grove. So just a reminder that all of the work that we've done out of the Office of Equity centered around that Educational Equity Strategic Plan started here with this learning system and our 4 strategic goals. So just a recap of the presentation calendar that started with Superintendent back on February 6th. Just a reminder of this journey as we begin to roll out the foundations of this very important work. We started with the why. We talked about the moral imperative because education is a civil right and we have the need to serve all children, particularly with an emphasis on those who may not have been served well in the past. And then Mr. Cerruti presented on February 20th the how. He discussed a lot the research-based process we utilize in the development of the products, all of the products of our what, which includes the board policy, the educational equity framework, and the educational equity strategic plan. And once again, tonight is part 2. So Ms. Singh Allen, you mentioned this slide last time. We wanted to make sure that we brought this one back. Just as a reminder, this team really had a diverse representation of stakeholders across the district. And just to recap our definition of equity, what I wanted to share with you all tonight is that words matter. They're loaded with meaning, sometimes baggage, especially words like equity and fairness. And I would share with you that these kinds of terms make up who we are and what we do in our communities, in our country, and in our society. So when it comes to social issues and social policy, we have to figure out a way to calibrate our level of thinking so that we share the same meaning. And it's one of the reasons why we started with defining what equity means to us here in Elk Grove. We believe that this will help us to frame our work in order to construct all of the programs and rules and policies and actions we will take in the future. And then the last thing I'll share is that in addition to helping us calibrate our thinking, I believe what this definition will help us to do is really ground us in Elk Grove and what we value and what the needs of our community are. The work that we are tackling, it's no secret in the room, it's enormously complex, and I believe that it demands rational, emotional, and rigorous solutions, and so that's really what tonight is about, taking that second step into looking at the plan. And so taking a look at the framework once again, just a reminder that, when we look at the pillars that we have here, these are our foundations of the plan, the colorful parts inside. This inside portion really speaks to our learning vision and how we want to utilize this work to create systemic change in our people, in our policies, and in our practices so that we can ensure that every student in every subject, in every classroom, every day is measurably learning and really has a chance to get the things that they need to be successful in doing that. And so to be able to do that work, just as a reminder, we're going to be looking through these lenses on the outside of this framework to help us to frame the work itself. And so this second portion, with the explanation of the strategic plan that we will review tonight, we will once again look at the goals, recommended actions from the strategic planning team, and some possible measures to accomplish those goals. And just a reminder that this plan is fluid and remains adaptable if we need to make any adjustments, and it will be continuously monitored and progress reported to all stakeholders across the district. What I will share with you is that what's awesome about this work here in EGUSD is that we are already investing heavily in a lot of this work that lives outside of the plan. And I believe that we are deeply committed to changing the outcomes for all kids. We've heard repeatedly from the community, even some tonight, that we aren't meeting all those outcomes, and that's what this work is really about. I believe that it will be crucial for us as we move forward to continue to share what our successful research-based practices are, in ways that we are already making growth, but also looking at some of the goals and realizing some of the successes that we have for our students. I believe that it will also be additionally equally important to communicate with all stakeholders all the things that are new or improved, the additional actions that we will take or invest in to ensure equitable outcomes for kids. So without further ado, Looking towards student-centered support, that is our fourth foundation in the plan. So in looking at this plan, in this particular foundation, this really is about supporting our schools to provide systems that meet students' need for social and emotional growth in order to eliminate the achievement gap, the opportunities gaps, and all the disproportionality that we see in our data, some that we heard tonight once again. And some of the goals in this action are really centered around improving and increasing the climate on our campuses and how connected our schools feel to our campuses. Are they engaged? And so with this particular area, student-centered support, it's really about improving those systems across our campuses and across the district. And how do we do that? Of course, to improve student engagement. I'll share with you that some of the recommended actions from the strategic planning team, I'm going to read a couple of them for you. One was provide opportunities for students to attend professional learning, such as the Unity Center, the California Museum, and the Museum of Tolerance to develop equity lenses in our students themselves. Provide opportunities for students to participate in site and district committees to ensure the inclusion of student voice. Develop a Students of Diversity Leadership Council. Implement restorative practices strategies such as classroom meetings, community circles, and other social justice strategies to eliminate disproportionality and discipline data. Blend school teams into multidisciplinary teams to increase connectivity of programs and services. So across our campuses, we have school teams that facilitate the implementation of programs such as PBIS and leadership. We're looking to build equity teams. And so how do we blend that kind of work to create interconnectivity amongst all of that work on campus so that it doesn't feel to our staff, first of all, like it's separate work, but that we can bridge coherence between all of those pieces together. So some of the possible ways we're looking to measure this kind of work in this foundation area. In working with research and evaluation, looking at the percentages of students reporting the favorable ratings that we see in our culture and climate surveys that we take annually, and also looking at that same kind of data from our staff. Additionally, looking at the school and district implementation ratings of programs like PBIS and the multi-tiered systems of support. So looking specifically at those students needing support and receiving the types of interventions they need to get the things that they need. And then finally, the percentage of students suspended by student group and disparity. And we're looking at a change over time. So not just those raw end numbers, but how are those gaps closing? And then additionally, the percentage of students reporting school engagement and school connectedness. And looking at those individual student groups once again, and the disparities of change over time. And when I mention student groups, that we're looking at our students with a disaggregated lens, so maybe looking at that through an ethnicity, from a perspective of ethnicity. So as we heard some of the parents come forth in talking about the African American suspension data, so those will be the kinds of pieces of data that we'll be looking at to measure in this foundation area. And so some of the work that is currently happening in our district in this area, I just pulled a few things. These are right from our website. So just a few snapshots. Looking at social emotional learning, PBIS. Maybe the public may not know, but I know all of you do. We engaged in a 3-year process to implement PBIS at each one of our school sites. And then looking towards Foundation 5, please excuse my voice. Looking towards Foundation 5, really in this area, it's all about the relationships that we have within our schools, with our families and with our community. And so in this particular foundation area, we're really looking at it from the perspective of the school, district, and office environments, and all the places where all our staff, students, and families feel connected and supported, but additionally have input into decision-making. And that's one thing that we've really been trying to drive home with our principals. There are some stark differences between involvement and engagement. So moving from how involved our families are in terms of, do they come to back to school night? Do they go to open house? More into the decision-making on those campuses and really being involved in the academics of their children. So some of the goal areas for this particular foundation involve improving stakeholder communication, engagement, and relationships, and increasing the education opportunities of our families. That's our students and our parents and the community themselves. So some of the recommended actions that were brought forth from our strategic planning team, I'm going to read a couple of those as well for this particular foundation area. Create diverse and strategic parent groups to support stakeholder populations and subgroups. Increase partnerships with community organizations, focusing on providing resources to students and families. Focus on district and school events or provide opportunities to hear the voice of families and the community. Increase family education and engagement opportunities and supports. Some of the possible measures to monitor the goal progress in this foundation area include looking at the percentages of families reporting favorable connectedness and a sense of belonging at their schools and at the district level. These are the types of questions that we ask on our LCAP survey, on our annual parent survey, in addition to the California Healthy Kids survey that goes to our staff and our students as well. So we would do a cross walk of that data. And then the percentage of families reporting effective provision of opportunities for parent involvement or parent education. So what we want to know in this area is, what are the parents saying about the opportunities that are provided to them with respect to being involved and engaged, and then additionally to have an opportunity to have education like some of those parent university nights that we have, or the curriculum nights that we have here at the district and at our school sites. And here are some pictures, once again, that were taken right off of our website. And we all know about our FACE office. That is the framework from the FACE office right at the top there. Looking at Foundation 6, recruitment, hiring, and retention. In this goal area, in cabinet, we call this the HR foundation. And in this goal area, really what we're focusing on is trying to ensure that as a district, we are recruiting and hiring, developing and retaining the most highly qualified and diverse staff as possible. I will say that it's one of the reasons why you all supported the recommendation from staff to hire an additional director of personnel in HR. They've been heavily investing in diversity kind of affairs already, and we're hoping to increase those kinds of opportunities here. So looking in this goal area, one of the goals is to increase leadership and development among teaching, administrators, and classified staff. And then additionally, looking at those professional growth opportunities and really how we provide those kinds of opportunities across the organization as a whole in terms of leadership development, and really looking at that amongst existing and newly hired staff. And then improving staff diversity to better represent that of the student population. And so on one of our infographics on our main webpage, we demonstrate the percentages of the demographics of our students, and then we mirror that with the demographics of our staff. And that is something that we're going to be tracking annually. And so it's one of the ways that we want to measure. And so let me just show you that. So looking at the percentages of staff taking on leadership roles, and then the percentages of staff reporting favorable support of professional growth and development, and then organizational learning itself, that's that leadership development. Proportional composition of staff by ethnicity compared to students and disparity change over time. So really what we're after with that particular measure is trying to ensure that the diversity of our staff truly reflects the diversity of the populations of our students that we serve. And some of the recommended actions that came forth from our strategic planning team, I'm just going to read a few of those for you. One is to expand the CTE pathways for ECE learning and to create a pipeline of teachers in our district. So what that would look like is, how do we create a pathway for students to become teachers themselves in our district? Developing Diversity Leadership Academy for people of color to create a pipeline into leadership positions in EGUSD. Establishing and implementing a process to provide orientation to all new administrators on equity and implicit bias. Annually compile and report demographics of staff and student populations. Spend targeted time at campuses and universities with diverse populations to recruit and build a pipeline of candidates for people of color. And so this is a representation of our latest job fair that we just had last month. So looking forward with Foundations 1 through 6, what we did is we tried to put together a timeline of some of the actual annual actions. We know that this could change depending on what those actions are to try and meet some of the goals in those particular foundations. But really what we're after with this timeline, this is on the next 3 slides, really what we need to consider here are just the levels of implementation with those particular actions in those goal areas for those foundations. And so if I were to look at these first 2 foundations, really what we're trying to consider is, with each of those goal areas, how are we moving really from awareness to full implementation of each of those goal areas? And how do we use the actions to make that happen? And so just as an example, if we looked at that first goal area in Foundation 1, all curricular materials are reflective of our diverse student population. We know that some of that is happening, but we know that we don't have full implementation across the board in all of our curriculum. And so that's why you see it depicted as such. And then in Foundation 2, if I were to just select increase and improve the social emotional support for all students, we know that that's work that we are currently doing, but we know that it isn't full implementation across the board because our outcomes don't show that. Right? So we know that it's work that we will be, we're already investing in 17, 18, and we'll continue all the way through 22, 23 in this 5-year plan. And then looking at the next 2 foundations, in Foundation 3 and in Foundation 4. Foundation 3 is really similar to what I shared with you in numbers 1 and 2. And then a different example would be in Foundation 4, when we're talking about, improving systems of support to increase the academic success of students. That might take some additional resources that we may not have yet. And so some of the actions that are written in that particular area, we know that we currently aren't doing. There are things, some new things that we like to have happen. So maybe that's something that we can start in 18, 19, or 19, 20. And then looking at Foundation 5 and in Foundation 6, some examples of some of the work and investment in terms of considering the levels of implementation. When I look at Foundation 6 and it says increase leadership development among teaching, administrative, and classified staff, we know that with those particular kinds of actions that we have written out in the strategic plan, that's something that will take some consideration and exploring and some preliminary implementation before we actually dig into that. And so that'll more than likely begin in 2019, 2020. That was kind of funny to say, 2019, 2020. And so what I'd like to leave you with today, just a few points. Last time I was with you, we talked about, you know, those lenses that we need to look through in order to do this work effectively. And I really believe what this says on the slide. You know, together we can change the rules of the game when we think about this notion of equality versus equity. And because people are served in varying degrees by the dominant culture, we must consider the ways in which the dominant culture manifests itself in our district, in our schools, and in our classrooms. So that individually and collectively, every teacher, custodian, school secretary, principal, central office employee, community advocate, parent, every student, you know, the question that we have is what will be our story here in Elk Grove? We have an amazing opportunity to be a beacon of light, an example for change with all that we are faced with in our own school district. And I believe that we can be the change that we need to impact the game. And if we do that, we would be ensuring that the inalienable right of every child to get what they need when they need it. So with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lauer. Before we go into questions from the board, I do have one public comment slip, so I want to invite that individual up. Is Ms. Monique Williamson with us? Feel free to pull that mic down. It looks a little high.
Hi. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. I think that you have kids, and so I think that you care. The work that we do is affecting our kids. I have kids in the school district now, and as an African American parent, they struggle. Issues, and it's real. I like to open with a quote. Great leaders are almost always great simplifiers who can cut through argument, debate, and doubt to offer a solution everybody can understand. Okay, so simplify. Okay, doesn't have to be rocket science. I like what you said. However, there were a lot of public comments about the needs of African American parents and students that I didn't hear that were met. I wrote a letter, so I want to read some of the problems and solutions that I wrote about. One was of course, we know that we have a big meeting and youth are being intimidated and harassed within the Elk Grove School District, so that it's creating a really hostile environment. Per the existing Elk Grove School District policy, youth causing harassment should be disciplined. The ability to discipline students already exists under the current hate violence section per the Elk Grove School District policy. There needs to be a matrix developed, a racism matrix developed and implemented in the district policy. I didn't hear that that needs to be added. So the current discipline matrix needs to include racial harassment. The only reference to racial harassment in the current policy pertains to hate violence. The matrix needs to reflect consequences for racism before the racist behavior becomes violent. History helps shape our identity and helps us form perceptions of other people. The partial, gloomy chronicle of African American history in our current textbooks helps continue the cycle of cultural hierarchy and stereotyping. School textbooks at the state level lack the representation of African American contribution to history. I did hear her speak a little bit about that.
Excuse me, there is a time limit. I do encourage you, if you would like to submit your letter, we will all read it.
It's been submitted.
Okay.
And my frustration is that I didn't hear it in the, in her plans.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm up here to kind of share with you. So
I understand. We do have a 3-minute time limit, to be fair to everyone in our public
Okay,
speaking. So your 37 second, well, between you and I, we're over at this point.
Oh, okay. So basically that was it.
Okay.
That was it. So
Okay.
I basically got to share. Those were my two main, the main subjects that that are particular to African Americans and that need to be included.
Okay.
And we have special needs, and you all need to include that.
Thank you.
I didn't hear that.
Thank you. We've heard it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. All right, let's have Ms. Lowry come up. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions from the board. Let's see, I'm going to start to my left. Anything missing, Alan?
Thank you. Before I begin, is it Ms. Williams?
The last speaker?
Yeah.
Williamson.
Okay, can you just at least send me a copy? I don't remember ever seeing it, so I don't know where you submitted it, but I'd love to see your whole thing.
Why don't we ask Mr. Hoffman to make sure we all get it?
That'd be great. So I just want to make sure that at least I've seen it. I don't know where it went, so thank you so much. So yes, a few questions. Let's see. First, so I see that we typically have 2 reports broken up. So is there a reason why we don't have our progress report as part of this report?
Progress
believe
report for what?
We've always, well, at least for the last several board meetings, we've had 2 race and equity reports. We have one related to the master plan, if you will, and then progress that we're making. Okay.
Just real quick on that one. The progress report wasn't submitted for this week. It was clarified at the previous board meeting that because of spring break, we wouldn't be able to submit one on time. So, but there will be a progress report for the next.
For the next one, okay, just, even if it's the smallest of measurements of an update, because again, that's sort of our accountability back to what we're doing outside of this sort of master plan.
Absolutely.
So that would be,
and we will make sure that the progress report, whatever would have gone into that one would be, but again, there just wasn't sufficient time with the
Okay.
spring break.
okay. So let's see, let's start off on page 6 for the student-centered support. Did we include students for feedback to help identify the goals? And the reason that I ask that is, students they're very smart, and when adults tell them what a goal should be versus including them in the discussion, they're not always the same. So do we have plans, or have we included them as part of this feedback?
Yeah. So we utilized some data from some student focus groups that we held, in addition to the voice of the students from the survey data.
From the data, okay. And then within this this particular student-centered support, how do you envision receiving, implementing, or even us as a district being accountable to the data we do receive from students? So what are we going to do with it, and what sort of what do you envision as a measurable and sort of our own accountability? What are we going to do with it?
With the data and what we
once we get this feedback, right.
I imagine it would be similar to any process that we use with all of our stakeholders in terms of taking a needs analysis standpoint and how we ask the questions that we ask in terms of doing gap and cause analysis and coming up with a plan, we would utilize that student voice or those data sets the way that we would with any of our stakeholder groups. So I would fashion it in the same way that we take a look at our LCAP data.
Right.
We'd use a similar process.
Okay. My next question is on school, family, and community relationships. Looking for the slide number 7. And this is related to a conference that I attended with the superintendent and a number of our associates a while back. It's been over a year for the Family and Community Engagement Office, but since this is related to that, have we assessed if our schools are welcoming from the point a parent walks onto campus to volunteering in a classroom? The reason I mention that is that we spend a lot of time in small groups of what we can do for very easy and cheap fixes of what that welcoming environment could look like. Have we ever done something like that to see, how are we doing?
We actually have some very specific examples of work that's been done in front offices. So as parents and community enter to the office, welcome in all the languages that the school has attending at the school. So we have some examples that we could share of specific things we've already done and work that Lisa Lavasser supported and is being done at other sites. But we have some very specific examples where we've done that already.
Okay, so yeah, I'd love to see that because I imagine this should be sort of a uniform in terms of a welcoming environment. We need to be whatever is working on one campus or, whatever the samples are and what it looks like. We shouldn't have some that are welcoming and some that are not. So I'd love to see, because some of the welcoming language that was used in the small groups is to shy away of what you can't do. So don't do this, don't do that, as opposed to, what we can do. And so, similar to PBIS, and where we're not focusing on the don'ts, but we're really stressing the do's.
Yeah.
So just sort of retraining and using more positive language when someone comes on to campus. So I'd love to see what that looks like. But that was a great exercise that we all participated in. And again, it was small fixes that really went a long way to build that relationship with the community.
I know that it is a initiative of the FACE office, and some of those kinds of questions are on the FACE survey.
Right, okay. And then my next question is on Foundation 6, recruitment, hiring, and retention. This is going to be an ongoing, we've heard it from our various community groups, is the diversity. And so at some point, I would like to see how we are going to go above status quo in terms of recruitment. Because if we're sticking to status quo, we're not getting the results that we need. So what else can and should we be doing to be more creative and more aggressive in the diversity recruitment process? And then that word diversity sometimes, just like equity, if you were to ask different people, what does diversity mean to you? It's got to be something more meaningful than just a demographic check. And from my perspective, diversity is more inclusive. There's acceptance in there, and it's beyond just demographics. So true diversity includes inclusion, not just numbers. I mean, Elk Grove Unified or City of Elk Grove, City of Sacramento, very diverse city, but we're seeing that means nothing. So, so when we talk about diversity, I would love to really look into what that really means, particularly as it relates to our hiring practices. Other than that, thank you for the update. I always appreciate to see what we're doing and where we've come and where we need to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. Ms. Martinez-Larry, anything?
Couple comments. I really liked how in the equity report things were laid out as far as student-centered and their opportunity for them to be involved in leadership. Also like the fact that there's going to be a space for community voice and parent input from the community, which I think is very important. A point that I did see addressed in your slides was the suspension rates, and that's something that I've been asking about in the previous board meetings as well. So to be able to look at that more concisely, I think is important by ethnicity. Also, looking overall, I have to put on my college hat, my higher education hat, because there are a lot of programs at different college campuses. For example, Sierra College has a Black Men of Excellence program to help students pipeline from the high school directly into the community colleges. At Consumnes River, there's Jumpstart, which is focused on underserved populations, also on Black males specifically. So I look at coming from a four-year institution and then the two-year community college. I look at that perspective and look at the programs they have there, like EOP&S, the Educational Opportunity Program for Underserved Minority Groups, and think that partnerships with some of these programs would be really instrumental for our district. And I think of ways that we can get those mentors in here directly to work with our students and families are really critical in our communities. So I just trying to think bigger picture. If we can do some more of that work, I think would really be great. Also, the point and question that I had prior to your, or right after your presentation was how can we collect data in a way where we're reporting out if there's certain racial incidents happening on certain campuses. So, you know, again, that's one of my questions as well, is where do we foresee that going into, you know, our plan long term. I think it's great and wonderful that we're doing, you know, a lot of addressing some different points that were brought up by the community, but I feel like a lot of this work is going to be continuous and ongoing. You know, I understand that it can't happen overnight, but I foresee in the future that there's different ways that we can definitely improve, and so I'm excited about that work and look forward to that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to Mr. Pettis, I just want to provide some information related to one of your last comments about that online reporting for harassment or hate incidents and things like that. I believe Ms. Pinkerton at our last meeting provided an update, and I know you were out sick, so just wanted to close the loop. They are piloting a web-based system that will allow regular complaints and anonymous complaints. So that was the update we got last time. But go ahead, Mr. Pettis.
So how are we going to get that report,
Which report?
the one that you just mentioned?
The one that Santi talked to us about? So
That'll be a staff report that's coming.
That'd be, well, for instance, I like to recommend that every month or every 2 weeks during our board agenda, we get the student expulsion, involuntary transfer recommendations, that it would include that data set that you mentioned right now in that section. Is that possible?
What data set are you talking about?
Well, when we get our agenda, we have an item on the consent calendar on like number 4. It's student expulsions. You know, we have number of expulsions, and also other issues. I was wondering, under that section, can we include data sets, suspensions by high school, middle schools, elementary, by race in that section? Is that possible?
So really quick, suspension and expulsion, I mean, expulsions are never a consent item, so if you're looking.
Yes,
So,
I know that.
okay, you said it was consent.
Right, but yet, can we get data in that particular section of our agenda that's confidential by race, so we could analyze that and ask questions in closed session?
So we could not put confidential information on the public portion of the agenda, but let's talk about what kind of information you would like to see, and if we get consensus as a board,
Well, it just,
ask staff for that.
exactly, I understand that it's confidential, yes, but yet I would like to have some type of data set by suspensions, by high school, middle, elementary, by race, and trend studies. You know, how have we improved? How are we going up, or are we going down in this particular issue?
We have those data sets, and
Okay.
we can provide those. this section of the agenda is not the right spot for that, because this is the specific spot where the board's taking action with regards to expelling students. So we could do it under reports, so we could also do it in BCs, which we actually do provide during the year. Yeah, so but that information, that's just not the right spot to do it.
Okay, but another issue would also include bullying and hate speech and cyber bullying, whatever they call it. Yeah, I like to see those issues also because just recently I read a case study or someplace in which I didn't realize this, that a student who commits these particular hate crimes through the internet can be expelled oh, no, it could not be expelled because of the freedom of speech, the Second Amendment. So we have to be careful on that, those issues. So I just want to bring that out. But yet somehow we need to get that data set that you mentioned on that school climate issue of incidents of possible, how do you word that?
It sounds like you're taking care of that since I missed the last meeting was with the update they were giving too with collecting that data online. So thank you.
Okay. And another recommendation I would like to see is the issue on diversity. Also, in the consent calendar, we get a report on personnel actions of a variety of data sets or new hires, leaves, absences. Somehow, can we possibly work with that personnel report and break it down of new hires by race?
So we will be providing a report. I just actually had a conversation with Mr. Riley today on our one-on-one. So it'll be coming up. It won't be at the next meeting, but probably in one of the two meetings in May, which will be a combination. It will go through and show some of the practices we've done over the past few years with regards to hiring and recruiting and seeing some of the results of that. And as a result of that, you'll also see changes in the demographics of our staff as a result. One thing I'll just say up front is when you have a staff as large as ours, you're talking 6,000, 7,000 employees, and we hire a couple hundred or so in a given year. So even if we made huge changes and we had numbers that were even more representative of a variety of groups, and we did that over a 10-year period, our overall numbers aren't going to change from a percentage dramatically. So what we're going to have to be able to show is the changes we've made year to year, and then you'll be able to see incremental changes because, again, we only hire a couple hundred people in a given year of a staff of thousands. So we're not losing a whole bunch of the staff that already exists. So we'll actually go through, and we're working closely with our research and evaluation department, and we actually have a set of data points that we'll share with you that will be able to show how that works. So all that's in the works, and it'll be, I believe we'll be able to have it ready to go for you in May.
Also, I was watching TV like I always watch the game, the Notre Dame game. Also saw something in the morning, it was by LatinoNation.com, where they did a recruitment plan of bilingual teachers, and it was very informative how they went about recruiting teachers throughout the United States and the Southwest.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring that to your attention.
Take it away, Ms. Albiani.
I think what I find exciting when I do this, it's exciting to see this come to fruition after spending so much time on it, and you start talking, I feel like we're back in that committee room. And I get all calm, because you guys are all so calm. I think in Foundation 4, we're looking at how these things work in programs we already have in place, and I think one of the huge points of this plan is not that equity will be a separate pillar of our district. It will be embedded into the pillars that are in our district, and I think that's just a huge point that we need to make clear to people. We're talking about Family and Community Engagement Office. We've invested in that. We've hired a person. She's excellent. We're doing that work. We're taking a closer look at it. This gives us a lens to get closer to it, but I just think it's so important that these are things that we do value, we're already spending money on, and we're taking another critical look on it and bringing more people into the process. And so I just want to say, I think we're doing that in the right fashion. With HR, I'm looking forward to hearing what David had to say, what colleges are saying, how many graduates are coming out, and the different diverse, how many are available even. I mean, it's a give and take thing. And I believe the collection of data is a very important fact in that, we have incidents at schools, and I believe there's a system in SysWeb, are we collecting data on incidents and whether they're racially involved, what types of incidents to try to focus in on? Are the schools tracking those? Are we tracking those as a district?
We do track incidents that happen between students, and I don't know the details in and out of the way Synergy works, but I believe there's ways within Synergy to actually have multiple students attached to a given incident, so that we know if somebody was a bully in the situation or somebody was a victim in the situation. Synergy could do that. Now, I can't speak to that ins and outs of that, but we could put something together that would provide that information for you.
Yeah, I just think that would be a good move for us to take to locate. Thank you. Thank you, Sonia.
Mr. Madison?
First, I want to comment, good report. You guys have put a lot of time and effort into it, and a lot of it's encouraging. My concern, again, I think I voiced it last time, all the 67 schools, are they buying in on this? I mean, you spend a lot of time with us up here, and we talk, and I know you talk to principals. From the principals, is it being translated all the way down to what kind of work have we done with them, I guess, on this related subject?
Yes, so we have been holding K-12 or K-12 principals educational equity meetings for the last 4 weeks, 4 months. Yeah, I believe we're on our 4th meeting. We have a meeting coming up next week. Yeah, next week. And so as we have been providing you the information first, we've been going back with our principals, creating separate committees with them to dig more into the work. And also, we provided them with why, how, and what as well. We had a session on the board policy with them during our last educational equity principal meeting. So that we've been investing a lot in hearing their voice, gathering their input through this entire process.
The employees on the front line, the teachers is delivering the curriculum, on their staff meetings at that local level, is this being discussed with them, with the teachers?
You know, what I will share with you is that we are right in the midst of developing a communication plan on how we roll out the strategic plan itself to all of our stakeholders. We know that the foundation of this work, you know, really is about how do we get it into the hands of our teachers and how do we impact what's happening in our classrooms. We know that that's going to take a lot of communication, as Chris has shared, in terms of the sheer number of teachers that we have across our district, but we are currently working on that right now, that communication plan and how it's rolled out to each and every staff and each and every teacher across our district.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not suggesting that we're going to take the teachers' time up all day like we're spending here, but there ought to be some information given to them as we roll this out, and they can read about things and what's going on. And if I walk in a class, have you heard about our equity plan? You know, you don't get the eyeballs just staring at you. You know, not really. So that's
one of the things we've done is we've tried to. You're getting this information, and then we're working with the principal. So we haven't got out ahead of the board. So you're really getting the information first, and then we'll be rolling it out to everybody else. We have already begun to work with the principal group, but again, it's been okay. So we just shared this with the board. Here's what we shared with the board. we just shared this piece with the board. Here's what we shared with the board. So we haven't got out ahead of communicating this ahead of what we've been doing with you. So the board, you guys really are the first line of who we've shared the information with.
Okay, well, I trust, again, I know I don't want to get way out, but I just want to make certain that the people at the line level understand what our goals are and our progress and what we want to do with this district. And next year this time, I certainly don't want to walk into a classroom and they never heard about it, or they don't know any details about it. That's my concern overall.
Absolutely, thank you.
And then, second of all, I just want to kind of add a little comment to, Dr. Martinez brought it up about the serving of the black male, the different strategies they've got going on at the colleges there. And you know, my real concern, this has been all good, what we're talking about, but the African-American boy in school is truly underserved in a lot of different ways. And I can attest to that because I was a product of it a lot, going through the public school system. And there's a lot of poor, angry, hungry, young African-American boys that are out there particularly. And you look at our suspension rates, that's some of the root causes of the problems and how we serve that. And I hope that we can look at some of these analyses that Dr. Martinez talked about at the college levels too, on how we serve. I know we got PBS and those types of things, but that's still not touching home of the root cause of the problem of what's happening. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to raise the child, but they're in our schools and we have issues and we got problems. And how we attack those problems is a central point of what district can do that job and look at it and see how we can address the underserving of some of these African-American young boys, because I see them all the time and I feel for them. And I had some people that touched my life, so that's why I'm bringing it up right now. And I didn't hear a lot of that, but when we look at a lot of our issues, that's where they are at school. So I'm going to leave it on that note so we can look at from some different lens a little bit how we can go around and serve. And I know it's a lot more prevalent in some of our more challenging schools, but even some of the more affluent schools, you still have that same problem of the underserved where folks don't quite understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a number of questions, and I want to start with a comment. First of all, I was happy to hear comments from you that give recognition to the fact that the work being proposed is enhancement. It's not new. Again, I've said this before, while we certainly have and can always focus on work to be done, we haven't been sitting on our hands. It's not new. And I think that staff, district office, school site need to be recognized for the fact that they have been addressing issues. They haven't been ignoring issues. And so I'm pleased to hear that, because we're not singular in our purpose of what we do in the district. And not making any value judgments, and it's really important for me to say that with respect to what's being done here, I hope there's a recognition that there's been a diversion of time. There's only so many hours in the day. As people work on this, they're not working on something else. And we have a lot of important work that we do, so that I think that there are things that suffer as you divert time, and we are diverting time. Relative to the student-centered support, do we collect our own data? There's data all over the place. Do we collect our own data with respect to the reasons why kids are suspended or expelled, and why kids don't get engaged in the myriad of activities that are already available to them? And conversely, why kids are not suspended or expelled, and why kids indeed are engaged? Do we collect our own data in those areas? Because you see, and I want to say, I don't care what numbers you put on the table. I don't care if it's 1, if it's 100. It's a number. It doesn't mean anything. And I've had these meetings with Mark before, with Sue and Christina Keto. I don't care what a number is if you haven't identified why the number. Because if you don't know the why, how do you change anything? So do we do that for ourselves?
I will share with you that, having been a school principal, I don't believe that up until now, right, we may not have been asking those kinds of questions in terms of the why behind why a child is suspended, right? Why a child is suspended. So if we examine those answers would rest on how the adults treat children, and also there's also some responsibility on the children themselves, right? So some of those pieces are actually collected in our socio-emotional kinds of data that we collect. That gets to the root of what adults think, what kids think. And it's in that kind of examination that we could get to some of those root causes. So we do collect that kind of data, but I do believe that we will be looking at it more closely because of this plan.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I don't want to appear to be negative. But if you don't have the information, how in the heck do you ever make a change? I mean, we've been talking about these kind of issues for a long time. This is 2018, and we're just going to say, oh yeah, that's really kind of good information that we should have so that we can make plans. We're going to start, that's something we are going to start today? That is something new?
So we have some of this data. One of the things that I'll say is our research and evaluation department has fundamentally transformed over the last 6 years. And we now have people employed in the district that aren't just putting together charts that show, progress on a standardized test. Like my conversation with David today and my conversations with each of my cabinet members, our research and evaluation department now interacts with every single department that we work with. And Ms. Lowry referenced the team multiple times in this report, in that we have people with the ability to do program analysis and deep dive analysis in a way we haven't had the skill set in the district in the past. So we are going to be able to get at root causes. The decision-making model, we're pretty good at it now. Something we've been working at for several years, and now we're getting better and better at it. So every time we go through a process like this, we get better at doing the work. So have we made decisions based on the data sets that we had in front of us? Absolutely. And those data sets are getting better and more consistent in being able to provide us the information. But the other reality of this is we're talking about a kid. And there is no single, simple data set that's really going to give us the absolute answer. It happens from listening. It happens from asking the right questions. So it's just so much more complicated than determining the roundness of a wheel. Which you can do some pretty much more math than I know how to do and be able to. But this work is more complicated. But I will say we've never been positioned better to do the kind of work that we need to do moving forward.
I hear that. And I'd have to say that one doesn't have to be particularly sophisticated to collect data that child was suspended from the classroom because This is the third week of the school year, and he's come without any materials. He's not prepared. He talks back to the teachers. He creates situations where nobody learns in the classroom because the teacher's total time is devoted to taking care of them. I don't think that's particularly complex.
We have that data.
But
We-
I
hold
asked,
on.
but
We-
I
we-
asked that question. Have we? And I didn't hear a yes.
We have that type of data. But to understand why the student is behaving in the way he or she is behaving and what responsibility we have as a school system, that adds to that kid's challenges. Is there something that we're doing that's adding to much of what he already brings to us? But we have a responsibility as well. And finding out that type of information doesn't happen in a simple way.
And you say all the kids, Ms. Fortuna, you don't know what type of teacher, that there's different processes in there too. The management of the class, you know, it is a complicated measurement in there on, you say, when do you get to the point, or he or she is dealing with this child all day long, or disrupting the class. I'm trying to understand what you.
I understand what you're saying. The point is, I mean, to me, it's really pretty simple, and I don't understand. Perhaps I'm not clearly stating it. Children have been in classes for hundreds of years. If they have, and I've said this before, I don't believe, and I'll never believe, I'll never accept that the school has 100% responsibility for dealing with the education of the children or their social and emotional issues. We have a role. We're 1/3 of that piece. The parent has a piece, the kid has a piece, we have a piece. But in terms of identifying, and I've not heard it, we have been suspending and expelling kids for years. Yes or no? Yes. And I've said simply, if we're going to address the changing that specific, just that specific issue, having fewer suspensions and expulsions, have we collected data as to the reasons why we do it so that we can plan accordingly in our own behaviors and in the behaviors of those who are working with the kids? It just seems so simple to me.
Mr. Forcino, we have dramatically reduced suspensions and expulsions over the past several years.
I know that.
Dramatically reduced. And we did that by looking at our practices and how we interacted with students and what behavior students were doing, and trying to identify. We have software packages now that help us analyze when this student is acting out, and you do it over several day period, and you find out that it's a certain time of the day where this happens again and again and again. And then we're able to go in and find out that the kid's actually hungry. And that's the issue in that particular. So again, we are so much more well positioned to be able to do this work than we ever have before. The reality is, though, while we've reduced, just staying on suspensions, we've reduced suspensions dramatically for every single group of students in our district and our overall numbers, but the disproportionality is still there. And that is a piece that, is what's within our system. Can we identify within our system where we can make an impact there? Well, so again, this is so exciting, and this is work that is going to make the difference in the lives of kids. And it's not a separate piece. It's going to be interwoven in all the work that I know you value and the outcomes that you want to have for kids. This isn't going to be something separate that takes away from that. It's going to be interwoven into the work in a way that's just going to allow outcomes and opportunities for kids to improve.
I just want to add too that in the last 8 years, I can attest to it, the suspension rates, even for African Americans, have gone down a tremendous amount. However, the disproportionality is still there, as Superintendent just indicated. My point is now, I think a lot of the teachers have done a good job. They're trying to recognize it, or managing a class to be mindful of kids that are troubled, etc. But now we still have a root cause problem in there with these remaining kids. By school, what's going on, whether they're hungry, they're angry, they're broken homes. It's just a plethora of problems in there that's part of this suspension in here. And how can we address some of those issues in there?
And that's what I was saying. If you don't know the why, if you don't identify the why, how do you ever put a plan on the table?
Well, I think we're heading in that direction.
It's
what we wanna do.
2018. I have the answer to my question. Next question. And it's along the same line. We established an Office of Family Community Engagement because certainly our recognition that we did not have the level of parent involvement, community involvement that we wanted to see, the level of communication. So I asked the same question. For our work, do we have data that identifies, one, why parents do participate and are engaged, and two, they don't participate and not engaged? Because if you're going to have a question that determines your progress based on parent input, then how are you going to address it if you don't have the answers to the questions, why and why not do parents participate? Do we do that?
We do that. So,
and if we do that, then can we have that? Because I've never seen that.
So the reason that we hired Lisa Lavasser to do this work is her expertise in this area. The strategic plan that we put together for family and community engagement, it was based on the research that is done in the area. So we know why some parents engage and other parents don't engage. And we know that we have to reach out and go beyond the 50-50 line in getting people to engage. And the family, just as one example, is the teacher home visit concept. So the teacher home visit concept connects parents in a way, and it works, and the data shows it works, and we can attest. And I'm going to actually go on a visit in a couple of weeks. I'm excited about it. But the opportunity where we have to go further than meeting people halfway in some situations in order to make these connections. And so that's just one example of work we're doing in the FACE department along those lines. A ton of work to do, and so much more in front of us, but we certainly do understand what are effective strategies for engaging parents.
Third question. With respect to hiring staffs that reflect our populations, and we've talked about this before, but I didn't hear it in the plan. This isn't our issue alone. We hire, we provide job availability information pretty widespread to try to garner applications from people to come work for us. But what I didn't hear, and I've talked to Chris about this, I talked about it today, is what I didn't hear is specifically, what are we going to do with the institutions that indeed provide the degrees and the certificates? Because ultimately, they are the providers of the pool. We are the ones who hire from the pool. They provide the pool. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things we can do to try to maximize the number of applications we receive from people from diverse backgrounds. But at the end of the day, if the colleges aren't doing their job of enhancing, and Crystal spoke about one program, if the colleges aren't doing their job, then we're not going to have an applicant pool. So is that included in the work that you?
Yeah, that work's already begun. That's part of my responsibility, my interactions with the university professors and or the presidents.
And not that I want to put you to doing more work, because I am very sensitive to the amount of time that's being relegated to this task at the expense of other tasks, because I got to say that. But when we talk, one of the things you're talking about in terms of student engagement is, increasing opportunities and looking at leadership and so on and so forth. And that's good, but do we start from a base of knowing over time what the participation level has been of children of different backgrounds in the leadership positions in elementary, middle, and high school, so that we have a starting point? If we say we want to increase, do we have the hard data that gives us our starting point?
We do have hard data in a number of programs, and whether we have them in every single leadership program, I would say we probably don't have that actually in front of us right now, but we do have it for a variety of programs. AVID being one, career technical education programs as another, our IB programs, our AP programs, and our GATE, the number of students and percentage of students of different backgrounds that are part of all of those programs. Those are things we've been tracking for several years, and we do have that set of data, and we know exactly where we are, and we know we certainly have room to grow in those areas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. Thank you, Ms. Lowry. So just a few things. I'll try not to talk at length about things that have already been discussed. So first off, I very much liked hearing the approach, which is to blend the equity work with other work that is already being done, as opposed to siloing it and having it, pretending that it's being implemented in a vacuum. That's very important. Let's see, page 11, 0.4.1 in your slide, the ratings on the climate and culture survey. I just wanted to note, having seen those fairly recently, a lot of our campuses that have had incidents of racial hatred have fairly high ratings. These are self-ratings by the student body on whatever we call it, racial harmony and school connectedness, and do you feel safe and welcome, and all those things. So what that really tells me is that we need to just make a habit going forward of disaggregating that type of data, because apparently we're missing some pretty important trends. And some of my colleagues brought up that point as well, and I know that you mentioned as well that we are disaggregating some data, but I just want to suggest that if it is at all reasonably possible that that data looks different disaggregated, let's just present it that way going forward. On, I believe it's page 17, we talked about the staff training, I think, professional development. I would like to know, have we assessed our level of readiness or receptiveness of our teachers and all of our employees to receive the kind of training that we've been discussing so far? I know that we haven't, as a board, made selections yet on the types of training we're going to be deploying, but the Arbinger training, the implicit bias training, things of that nature, the SEED training that's been discussed by some of the members of the public. Are we even to the point that we know, I guess, what the receptiveness of our employees is to that sort of thing?
I know that we've had a lot of conversation about doing some kind of initial survey with our staff to make some of those kinds of assessments in terms of, how our staff is feeling, what they're thinking about what's been happening in our schools and in our community. I think it's a really valid point in terms of taking that level of input.
Yeah,
We do assess and ask for topics of which they're interested in. And so that information, and it falls in line very clearly with some of these things. So I think there is a readiness piece that's there that we can actually document the types of training that people are asking for. I mean, our principals have said they want training on how to deal with race and equity issues with their staff. So those kinds of pieces, we already are getting that kind of information. Another way to see it is, Arbinger specifically, is we've had waiting lists. Every time we've put together an opportunity to do it, we've had waiting lists of people wanting to do the training. The idea that in our tentative agreement, the leadership of the Teachers Association agreed that they wanted this done for every single member of the Teachers Association, and it's the first agreement that we have done. But that doesn't happen. The leadership doesn't come to that conclusion on their own. They're not going to bring something like that and put it into a collective bargaining agreement, a tentative agreement, without knowing that there's a readiness within their staff to want to do that work as well. So I think we have some really interesting indicators that kind of show that. But we also do ask, what types of professional development do you want? And those things line up with meeting the needs of kids along these lines, along with how to teach math better, along with how to do social emotional learning better, all those kinds of things. So we do have that kind of information.
Okay, well, that's helpful. I appreciate that. And just to place those questions in context, I want to make sure that that we're making a good use of district resources, a good use of the time of all the folks who are involved in this. But most importantly, the whole point of all of these exercises, of all of these changes that we're implementing, is change. So I want to make sure that we're not using some kind of training that isn't going to penetrate, that isn't going to provide the type of change that we need. I know that most of our staff are well-intentioned, and it does not surprise me that we have wait lists for the training that we've offered so far. That does not surprise me at all. What I fear is that those most in need of a new way of seeing things, more in line with the district and the board's vision, may not be those who rush to the line and are eager to avail themselves of this training. So I want to make sure that we know what we're dealing with, that we have a very good diagnosis of what our problems per se are. And if it takes having, some external professional auditor to identify those things, maybe that's a difficult thing to kind of self-diagnose. I just want to put out there that that's something that we need to be open to. And, we as a board, I think, have shown our commitment to invest in the types of training that we believe will produce change. But I just think it's really important, again, because our resources are limited, our time is limited, to have a check and make sure that that we're not just kind of throwing money at the problem, that we do get the change that we want to see. So I'll move on. Let's see. Regarding the issues of suspension and expulsion, we probably do have the information that we need now to define the problem, the what. But I think what I'm hearing collectively from folks in the community and a lot of my colleagues up here is that it's time to move to the why. What I envision is a process a lot more like what we're using now on the SARB process to get at why students are having attendance issues in school. So we've created a multidisciplinary team, right, that gets together and discusses the issues of one child at a time. The work that we need to be doing at this point is identifying the barriers for those kids and systematically dismantling them. And of course, everybody involved up here knows that is incredibly time-consuming and labor-intensive. So going forward, our equity work can't call itself equity work if it doesn't address that, if we don't talk about how we are going to start addressing that work. Which are the cases that require that more labor-intensive approach? How do we identify those? How do we deploy our existing resources, our psychologists, our mental health therapists? Do we need more social workers? All of those things. That's what I will be looking for. And so lastly, here we are. The report that you just presented, Ms. Lowry, was at least 18 months in the work, just in the development phase. And now the board has finally seen the presentations, and we are eager to see the report in its entirety. So can either Ms. Lowry or Mr. Hoffman talk about when the final written report will be made available to the board and the public? And, or Ms. Larson?
Well, Sandra knows more about where she is with the full. So basically, the process has been to develop and revise and refine the executive summary, because that's got the meat of the report. The full equity plan has artifacts from all the meetings, including agendas and those kinds of things, which are static. They're there and they're ready to roll. So pending any revisions and polishing up from taking everything that we've done with the executive summary, making sure that the full plan matches the word for word the executive summary as we've been revising. That's a question for you on how long you think that's really going to take. The other piece that we are interested in is running through, in terms of understanding how we can best post the plan on our website to the public. We'll be consulting with technology services with regard to ADA compliance on the best way to make sure that what we post is compliant and accessible to all. I'll let you know how.
Yeah, I think maybe just a few days, in terms of working with Steve and trying to make sure that, we are compliant with that piece. We'll be ready to go.
Okay, so the board members can expect it in their Friday packet, and members of the public by the end of the week?
So the executive summary, for sure. I mean, I think that is it. Yeah, so we'll go through, so that's that piece. I think we can make sure we have that up on our current website that we've been doing. So I think we can get that there, by the end of the week for sure. If not, the next couple of days. The actual document with all the other pieces to be able to put it all in one place, I don't want to sit here and say that's a 3-day end of the week piece, but the exec summary for sure. The ADA compliance piece now with a multi-volume document is just really, really challenging. And so that's a piece we have to make sure.
185 pages is the full document.
Yeah. I guess I'm not really understanding the need for more time beyond this week. So the executive summary was provided to the board, a couple of weeks ago. So obviously I don't expect that there would be any hang-ups in posting that online, but
Even that document, we have to go through to make sure from an ADA compliance piece works. So as you go over pieces, if there's an explanation that has to be able to show up graphs. There's some pieces there that are different if people want hard copies, all day. The posted electronic version where it actually meets ADA compliance, that's the more challenging piece. So we can get a copy up at the end of the week of the exec summary, no problem. I want to look around. Yes.
Well, what I didn't want to do was, not afford you all the opportunity to provide any input in terms of changes before we presented that to the public and put it online. I believe the only piece that we really need to do with regard to the exec summary is just to ensure when we post the English that we also additionally post the translated pieces, and I'm sure that'll just take us a few days.
okay. All right. I would still like to, before we close this item, because we've been hearing so much interest from members of the public, give people a sense of when the full report's going to be available, and I feel like we're not there yet.
Let me look at a calendar. Let's see what do we got. Trying to protect my staff a bit. April 13th would be a week from Friday.
Direction taken.
And I think we can do it before then, but that would be our drop dead date.
I think the board would need more time to go over such a large document. I really want to make sure we can come back and discuss that at our next meeting.
Okay, so you're giving me a different direction then. You just did a U-turn on me.
I did?
You said you wanted it posted by the end of the week, and now you're saying you want it after the next meeting.
No.
Okay, then I misunderstood.
I would like it sooner rather than later. And if I'm hearing, which is, this Friday would be the 6th, next week would be the 13th. Okay, well, okay, if the 13th, hopefully sooner is gonna work for you guys, I will live with that.
No, but I want to make sure you just, what you just said a second ago was you wanted the board to have an opportunity to provide us, provide feedback. So, do you, so then my suggestion would be we don't post until after the board has had an opportunity to give us feedback. We can confirm that feedback, on the meeting on the 20th. And then we
It's a fluid document. So why, and with that disclaimer there that this is not a final document, I think that that's readily understandable too. So if it's a work in progress,
Yeah, it was not my intention at all to suggest that we should hold on to it and not release it, so let me correct that. No,
Okay,
absolutely.
all right.
Don't do that.
So 13th,
Sure,
that's our target date,
That's the
and we're going to work to try to get it done before that.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So just to clarify, the 6th was the executive summary and the 13th is the full plan?
For web posting, is that what we're talking about?
For web posting, everything, yes. If we can have the, this Friday, exec summary, and the whole plan on the 13th.
Got it.
And if there's something that, that doesn't work, that we'll make sure we communicate that, but that's the goal.
Very cool. Well, sorry to belabor that, but I've been getting a lot of questions about it. So let's continue talking about next steps now. So we as a board have heard this information. We're going to receive the written report shortly. I guess I want to check my understanding of process with my colleagues. So my understanding is that once we do have time to read the full report, we come back and hopefully at whatever the next meeting is after we have that report, start talking about how we're going to implement recommendations, which of its recommendations we want to run with, and how we're going to do that. Is that everybody's understanding? I'm seeing some confusion. Am I making this more confusing?
inherent in what you just said says that this is going to move ahead of all other reports that have already been filed and accepted by the board, and reports that we have not revisited with respect to implementation. VAPA, PBL, positive attendance system, all of them carry recommendations. Many hundreds of people have been involved in them, and the implementation of those recommendations sit in abeyance because we have not gotten back together again to decide which, if any or all, we want to now move forward with and implement beyond what we've already done, and now we got another report. Is this report going to take precedence over all other reports that are waiting for implementation?
That's not the way I understand it, but...
Why, it's a question.
Well, that I'm answering. My understanding is that, frankly, we have to walk and chew gum. There's some timeliness associated with the issues addressed in the educational equity report. So, the fact that we would agendize it sometime soon doesn't mean that we stop having the other conversations. The next item on today's agenda is VAPA, so we just have to do both, I think.
Don't say that one because that's a misnomer.
Okay.
What we're going to talk about is not what we need to talk about.
So let me give a little bit of clarification from my view of the world. Some of this work we're already doing.
Right.
So it's not starting over. We're going to continue doing. I think we've done some affirmations that some of the work that we need to do, we need to continue doing, and we're going to do that piece is already happening. The board doesn't need to give us any more direction because the board's given us direction in those areas already. I think the next logical piece would be, we're looking at the VAPA report, the next item, but it's not the VAPA report that the committee did. It's the VAPA report related to the budget priorities that the board approved the past couple of years in giving feedback. So I think one of the next pieces we need to do is negotiations need to continue and finish that piece. And with the next piece is taking a look at the budget priorities and saying, okay, so which of these budget priorities do we want to take action on, because there are dollars available to the board to go through and take care of those items. And then the next piece is, and what are some new things that we'd be interested in doing as well? And in the new things, things within this report that we haven't touched yet, haven't started yet, does the board want to give some direction and some, if necessary, funding to begin that work? Do we want to do something in the VAPA section? Do we want to do something with regards to the attendance? Do we want to do, with the plethora of other priorities, do we want to have that conversation? So I think the next piece is we go forward with the work that we know we already need to do. The short-term projects that we've already been reporting on over the past several weeks and will continue to do, we're going to bring you a report in the next meeting or two about the anonymous reporting system. There's going to be a price tag that goes along with that. It's a relatively small one, but we're going to want to hit the ground running with that, so that's ready to go first day of school next year. So there'll be some pieces that are kind of coming through that need to be done. So I don't think there's a need to come back and bring the whole plan through and go item by item. This is first priority, this is second priority. I think we do a summary in May of everything that we've done up to this point in the equity work and give the board one more opportunity to see that piece. And then from there, like the board did at the special meeting when they gave us the direction of these are kind of the key areas we want you to move forward on, I think we would move with that. And then the question would be, is there, the things we've done so far haven't required really additional funding. They've been some implementation pieces. The one funding one is tied to this reporting system because it's actual software program we have to purchase. So we will need some direction on that. So like you said, we're gonna have to walk and chew gum. That was probably the best way I've ever heard it said, because we're already doing VAPA, but we want to do more. We're already doing. There's very little that we've agreed that we're not doing brand new yet until we get negotiations done, until we keep people in place. We're not doing brand new, but we are getting better at the things that we're already doing. And so it is a little. It's not crisp, clean line that this is exactly the next step. So walking and chewing gum is the reality of it, I think.
All right, I'm going to look to.
Well, I mean, I think what was one of the most important statements made is that it's fluid. So there's not going to be this stamp of finality. This is a work in progress. And so the input will be ongoing. It's not, well, here's the deadline and that's it. So from what I'm hearing is that, as we get more information, we share thoughts and feedback. We hear thoughts and feedback. We then share that portion back too. And I imagine this to be a process, an ongoing process that's not, that expires on May 15th or something, that we need to have all feedback and then implement, and that's it.
And what you're going to get also very shortly is the set of meeting dates for next year. And if you remember, one of the things that we asked for was some built-in workshop and board retreat time. And so these are the kinds of things that we'll be able to do in some deeper conversations where it's really tough to do. And and like I said, we broke this thing down over 5 meetings, 6 meetings, and you guys kind of said, why'd you guys break it over so long? This is why we broke it over so long, because we knew this was going to be an in-depth conversation. And again, when we really get into this next set, it's going to take probably a full day of kind of diving in and working through. So just know, 1,000 balls in the air. We're keeping them all going and improving as we go. But there are a number of things that we want to do, and the equity piece is going to weave into a whole bunch of, as we improve VAPA programs and go down that road. That's going to give kids who many kids already have access to VAPA programs. When we have VAPA programs that are more across entire grade levels or schools, now there's going to be kids who currently don't have that access that do have that access. That's equity. And so there's a whole bunch of pieces, I think, that are going to work through this through the entire system. So I appreciate the leadership. I appreciate the taking this on, and just know the balance of trying to pull all of this together. It's why I wake up at 2:30 in the morning every morning, try to think of how we could possibly pull all of this off with the limited resources we have. In the reality, we don't have all the resources we need to do all the things that we want to do in this plan, or the VAPA plan, or the attendance plan, or any of the other things. We don't have the resources to do all those things. That is a reality of it.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Ms. Albiani, did you still have, hold on, she's been waiting.
Oh, I think he's answered my question. I think it'll come in staff recommendations and pieces, and there'll be deep dive times. But I think staff should, as we come to these reports, they'll bring us suggestions. And I think it is totally true that as we work on things that we already have worked on, it has just provided us another way to look at them and make them better in the process that is already happening and already budgeted and already staffed. It's an additional piece to a new lens to look through that and make sure we're covering all our bases.
I have Mr. Madison next.
I just want to say in conclusion, the superintendent summed it up pretty well. I mean, and as Ms. Singh Allen indicated, this particular subject matter, it's an ongoing process here. We just can't, so this is it, do it, stop it, a timetable, it's ongoing.
Understood. Mr. Bettis?
Did I hear you say that maybe we could contract some of this out? Or seek out some outside resources?
No. What I was talking about is, generally speaking, when we are trying to diagnose our own barriers to reaching our goals as a district, we need to be open to having potentially an objective outside expert group be part of those conversations. So no, I was not suggesting we contract out the development of this plan or the implementation or anything like that.
Or what did you mean by seeking outside resources? That's what I misinterpreted what you said.
What I remember speaking to was kind of specifically survey information. So being able to go through, if we're trying to assess staff readiness for implicit bias training, just as an example, is that something we can do through our own surveys and teachers self-identifying or staff self-identifying that they're interested in doing that, or would we need a different tool to be able to do that? That was one example that I heard her share.
Oh, because I know like Stanford University has a whole unit on education inequality, and they do studies on this issue. They're experts on this issue, and they have done metropolitan areas and by school districts, and they have different indicators in which that we should review.
All right, sounds like a good resource. Okay. All right, folks, I think we've exhausted this subject for the time being. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more conversations on this, but thank you both for presenting this report, Mr. Hoffman for chiming in. And I think we are ready to take a short break before we proceed with the rest of the meeting. Thank you, folks. Colleagues, I count 4 board members on the dais, so we're going to get started again. Next item is going to be the update on secondary visual and performing art programs, which will be presented by Ms. Anna Tranell.
Good evening.
Jesus.
President Chaitis Espinosa, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. I'm happy to bring you an update this evening on some VAPA spending that has occurred as a result of some decisions the board made in allocating funds over last year and this year to secondary schools. I'd like to just start with our program overview. This is information that we have shared before, but just to give people a bird's eye view of what we mean by VAPA, or the Visual and Performing Arts. We're talking about visual arts, and we're talking about performing arts in a variety of different ways and programs. In secondary schools in particular, as you know, we have a graduation requirement in 9th through 12th grade, where students are to earn 10 credits of visual and performing arts in a program of their choosing. Several of our students take advantage of more opportunities than that, but we at least require that. We have a variety of other programs that we offer, as well as various ways that we fund, whether it's outside funding or in-district funding, to support those programs. I'd also like to highlight that we have several partnerships that we work with, and over the last few years have offered it to elementary and middle schools, as those are the programs that these outside entities are willing to support at this time. And every school in elementary and middle school in our district has been provided or offered at least one arts experience. And the majority of our schools take us up and take the partners up on that offer. So a little bit of the funding history, as you know, over the years we have seen various base funding for VAPA programs that has fluctuated up until currently, where we are looking at site budgets as well as other entities such as PTOs who help to fund these various projects. As you'll recall, in June of 2016, the board gave staff direction to identify critical and essential VAPA instructional materials, supplies, equipment, and or service needs for 2016-2017. This was as a stopgap until a more comprehensive needs analysis could be conducted and a long-term funding solution could be identified. And the first step was in December of 2012, December 12th, 2016, where the board approved an augmentation of $150,000 to go towards Category 1 requests, which were instructional materials and supplies. And then following that, in January of 2017, an additional augmentation of $254,050 was included to take care of Category 2 requests. As a reminder, Category 2 requests were equipment repair and or replacement. And also the decision was made to extend those funds to be available in the 2017-2018 school year. So that brings us to that total amount of $402,580. At the beginning of the 2017-2018 school year, there was a remaining balance of $254,050 that was still to be spent, and as of approximately today, we have $77,231 unspent. In the next slides, I will share with you each school individually, starting with middle school, the original allocation that began in 2016-2017, their expenditures to date, and their current balances to date being as of March 2018. So you can see here that for middle schools, all of the schools received a $14,000 allocation, and you can see the variety of ways that they have spent them. Remember that these were on Category 1 and Category types of interests as far as their needs. And the sites have until June 2018 to spend the remainder of their balances. So they are still currently spending. In high school, again, high schools received an allocation of $28,000, and alternative schools received $5,000. The secondary education department also received an allocation, and to date that has not been spent. Category 3 requests were not taken into consideration at the time of the augmentation, but we wanted to share with you, and just as a reminder of what those requests were, not all schools made a request for Category 3 funding, and those Category 3 requests are consistent of equipment necessary due to increased program enrollment. That was the definition of Category 3. Okay, so middle school, there were a few schools who asked for Category 3 funding, and all of our high schools and one of our alternative ed schools made those requests as well. In total, Category 3 requests would be in the sum of $523,827.06. At this time, that concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions.
Microphones help. Thank you, Ms. Trinnell. No questions. Mr. Madison?
Yeah, no questions. I want to indicate, I can see the schools that were so low in their VAPA programs are some of the neediest schools, and I see like Valley, $153,000 in Category 3 of their needs request. And because of the program has deteriorated over many years. I would think that's why the large request in there to bring it back up.
Just to clarify, the increased amount would mean that there is an increase in programming, and therefore perhaps due to the detriment before, they have to build back up their program.
Correct. Thank you.
Anything, Ms. Albiani?
Are we sending them some sort of notification, like spend your money?
My understanding is that there have been conversations with the secondary principals, just reminding them of their balances.
Yes.
They should look at this slideshow.
Them the slideshow. Going down the line, any questions, comments? Mr. Perez?
Yes, middle school category 3 request, $90,000, which is actually middle school. So what was that on?
I do not have their requests in front of me. We would be happy to share those with you.
So on middle school, what is the total amount that they have for all the budget?
For middle schools, on slide 8, the total amount was $126,000 that was allocated to middle schools. There were no allocations for Category 3 requests. However, what you see here are what the middle schools who responded, what they were asking for.
These are the requests. This isn't no dollars were allocated for Category 3. These were requests for Category 3. But the board funded Categories 1 and 2.
Can I interject in that to give a little more information to Tony too, because there was a reason we didn't fund Category 3, and that was that the information a lot of us had was such that the information that had been presented to VAPA staff by principals was not the same across all the programs. Therefore, the data was not accurate, and therefore it would have been inappropriate to fund anybody in that Category 3 area.
I don't think it was accuracy. It wasn't apples to apples, I think was the
Well, that was a piece of it, but the thing is, there was a very specific reason why we didn't get input from all the schools. And so if you happen to have, be at a school where the principal had encouraged you to put in the information versus being in a school where you weren't encouraged to do that, it wouldn't have been fair to the students or the staff to fund in that category 3 without complete information.
Well, we did have a limited number of funds as well, and so.
Well, that
when
was true. That was a negotiation.
Yeah, right.
What we, that's the other thing too. What we arrived at was a negotiation,
Correct.
basically, a compromise.
Right.
All right, going on down the road.
I just have a question. So when we gave the allocations to the school sites, are they in return giving us like all the expenditures, like line by line, and the full amount? So like, I just see, for example, by middle school, like Albiani, it says expenditures were 10,000 on one of the slides. So then, is it itemized where you're seeing that? Like clearance wise of what they have left, and then I would think it is important for them to have note of their balance of what's left so they can use it before the school year ends. I'd hate to see the money go unused if it's really needed.
So two things on that. The budget reports reflect the types of overarching things that they purchase, mostly in supplies and materials. It's typically outlined in their plan. I'm not sure if there were adjustments to that. And then secondly, they have been informed of their balances.
So with regards to the spending piece, Shannon and Hayes and her department and budget, they actually have the plans there. Yep. And so when something gets submitted as a request to spend, when staff actually goes through, looks at the plan and says, okay, you asked for banjos. Banjos is on the list, so you can do that. You asked for flutes, and flutes aren't on the list, so you can't. So they've actually been very clear in making sure that the sites stayed within their level 1 and level 2. If an adjustment needed to be made, we could have a conversation, but you did have to hold to the plan, and we are reminding folks to spend the dollars.
Thank you. I have a number of questions, and I'll start by apologizing for not reaching out earlier to ask, because some of these are very poignant, and so my apologies at the onset for not getting some clarification before this presentation. If anybody looks at this presentation without any context, it would seem as though VAPA receives adequate funding and there's money unused. Now, as a VAPA mother and connected to the network of VAPA parents and booster parents, I reached out to find out why. 7 of 9 high schools reported back to me that they had used the funding. So when you say that the data is March 2018, from what I'm hearing, they've all used it. So that, to me, becomes problematic as to, the validity of our report on the use. And again, the appearance being, not by you, but just because there's no real context, that it's sufficiently funded. If I were to look at this, that's what I would interpret, and that is not the case. So if 7 of 9 high schools are telling me they've used it, and one of those 7, I think there's about 700 or something left. So that to me right there is an issue. And if it's 7 of 9, I'm going to assume it's all 9.
Ms. Singh Allen, I can say the data that's there
Yeah.
are the dollars that have been spent out of those accounts. Now, teachers may have some purchase orders that are in process and on their way, so they may be of the conclusion that they knew they had $3,000 left and they've just submitted that. But the data you have there is the exact data on the date that it was produced, on what's actually gone through budget and has been received. Because if it hasn't been received yet, then it doesn't get.
Okay, and that's fair, and
yeah.
that's the fine line that you don't see in here is that
Correct.
the different processes that it perhaps did go through. But I wanted to share that with the board. If you wondered, well, why are there balances? There really aren't. And I think that that's an important thing to consider for future discussions. And then for me, VAPA is curriculum, it's not a project. So for me, it's sort of a mindset. Curriculum goes to, graduation requirements and a course, as opposed to something fun that students participate in. So that distinction is very important. My third point, when we did approve this, the additional allocations, I got feedback as of late, but that the controllers didn't have guidance on how to code certain things until certain deadlines. So I don't know, and I'm sharing that from some of the sites, that there's confusion on coding. So if there's anything that we can provide to provide any assistance for the controllers on that. But I've heard that from 3 sites here in my notes. Let's see, other comments. Will we be receiving an update, not on these specific monetary allocations, but things that Mr. Fortuna has alluded to in previous discussions, and I have mentioned as well, in terms of where are we at doing an assessment with the VAPA master plan, the work, the committee work. That's what I'm really interested in, because I know the money that is allocated is less than half of what the identified need was. So if I'm operating on that same assumption, that the need's there. What I'd like to see, and when Ms. Tina Penna left us, one of the last meetings, I remember chiming in on was that, all this time that volunteers invested in the committee work, that my fear was that the work would sit in this binder in our district office collecting dust. And so my fear is we really haven't revisited this in a long time other than this. So my hope is that we have an update on things that are not monetary, because we all recognize that there are budget constraints. But are there things that we can implement that don't have the large price tag? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that the committee has put in a lot of work, so I would like to see sort of where we're at with that. So I believe that that's something that's coming, but I just wanted to mention that since it is somewhat part of this discussion. And I think that's all I have for now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singh-Allen. I don't believe I have any questions or comments to add. Appreciate the update and look forward to rolling that into our conversations about curriculum and budget going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trinnell. So I owe an apology to our labor representatives for skipping over their item. So my sincere apologies. So let me go back to item 9. Are there any bargaining units wishing to address the board? Please come forward, Ms. Penry. Well, I had so many notes on here that it got buried under my notes. I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. So, good evening, everyone. I wanted to let you know that I brought a letter and a copy of the resolution forward that I'm asked you all to look at, and maybe you can get it on the April agenda. It's I don't know that they've done this before. I assumed they had. So we're going to ask you to look at that and do that again for us. I know that the members in the chapter have been busy. I'm really proud of the work that they're doing. We have all of our committees filled with member leaders on PI and different things. And it's really important that they're the people stepping up, and I'm continuing to take little steps back. And that's what's happening. So they're planning on having an event. I believe I don't have the exact date, I apologize. But to celebrate Classified School Employee Week for our chapter. And I know that they want to reach out and invite all of you to attend. So I'm sure they'll keep you posted on that. I was listening to you talking about the Arbinger training, and I talked to Rob and I said, so EGEA, how and they have an agreement. I said, well, CSEA needs to get on board with that. So he said, well, we're getting ready to have that conversation. So I want you to know that I can't make the decision for them, but I will definitely take it forward. I know that Janice, one of our health assistants, attended an Arbinger training, and she was just thrilled with it and talked to me about it and told me how wonderful it was. So I look forward to that. Just a little update on the chapter. Like I said, they're busy building, and I'm just really proud of them. I have 7 new stewards, union stewards, that are ready to. 3 of them will finish some work next week, and they'll all be certified and receive their jackets. So slowly but surely we're getting there. It's been a year, but I'm so proud of the work that they're doing. So I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you. I will not be here on the 17th. I will make sure that we have people here. I actually am going to take a vacation after a year, so well deserved, I think. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Real quick, thank you. Anyone else, bargaining units wishing to address? Thank you. Next, we're going to move to our public hearing action items. Thank you. Next, we're moving to our public hearing action items. Mr. David Riley is going to present consideration of public notice of the National Union of Healthcare Workers.
Thank you. President Charles Espinosa, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, Ms. Avalos. The Elk Grove Unified School District Governing Board is asked to review the National Union of Health Workers' initial proposal to Elk Grove Unified School District for collective bargaining. Pursuant to Government Code Section 3547, the following are stipulated for negotiations between the bargaining unit and the district. The union's initial proposal is officially presented at a public meeting of the governing board for public notice, and a public hearing is conducted to receive public input regarding the union's initial proposal. NUHW's initial proposal is attached. It is recommended that after the closure of the public hearing, the board take action to accept NUHW's initial proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. I'd like to call for a public hearing to receive comments on NUHW's initial proposal to the district regarding collective bargaining. I don't have any blue slips, and I don't see anyone wishing to address the board on this item, so I'm going to close the public hearing and call for a motion to accept NUHW's initial proposal to the district. Moved by Ms. Albiani. I heard a second from Ms. Martinez-O'Leary. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Mr. Riley also has the next item on the agenda.
Correct, thank you. The Elk Grove Unified School District Governing Board is asked to review the Elk Grove Unified School District initial proposal to National Union of Healthcare Workers for collective bargaining. Pursuant to Governing Code Section 3547, the following are stipulated for negotiations between a bargaining unit and the district. The district's initial proposal is officially presented at a public meeting of the governing board for public notice, and a public hearing is conducted to receive public input regarding the district's initial proposal. Elk Grove Unified School District's initial proposal is attached. It is recommended that after the closure of the public hearing, the board take action to approve the district's initial proposal to NUHW.
Okay. Before I call for that public hearing, could you just clarify for us, Mr. Riley, how these two items differ?
One, the previous item is the National Union of Health Workers proposal to us, and the second item is
The other way.
district's.
Got it. Just making sure. Okay. So I'd like to call for a public hearing to receive comments on Elk Grove Unified School District's initial proposal to NUHW regarding collective bargaining. I don't have any blue slips, and seeing no public comment, I'm going to close public hearing and call for a motion to accept EGUSD's initial proposal to NUHW regarding collective bargaining. Moved by Ms. Singh-Allen, seconded by Mr. Madison. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Next item is board member and superintendent reports. And again, colleagues, this is official committee work. Let's save everything else for other items from the floor. I am going to start on my left again. Ms. Singh-Allen, anything? Mr. Madison, anything? Go ahead, Mr. Fortino.
Yeah, last week, Chris and I met with City of Rancho Cordova, and we discussed a number of issues and spent a whole lot of time with facilities because they're very interested and motivated to know when further elementary sites are going to come online, as well as middle school and high school. What I have to say, and Chris and I talked about it today, we've had many meetings, and City of Rancho Cordova has always been a very good partner with respect to working with the district and looking at issues that are of mutual concern and need. But this last meeting we had was like superior. It was like the best 2x2 we've ever had. Our people are always well prepared. I don't think there's a question that comes up that Rob can't answer. But the City of Rancho Cordova people were so prepared and so professional and so involved. It was really satisfying to meet on a variety of topics where everybody was on their game with respect to what they needed to know and asking questions that would get at what they needed to know. So it was really a very, very worthwhile time for our district effort with the city of Rancho Cordova.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Anything to add, Mr. Superintendent, or anything to report, rather? Great. So, information items, we are moving on to other items from the floor. I will start at this end again. Anything, Mr. Fortino? All right, he's saving his strength. That means we're really in trouble. Yeah. Mr. Madison, anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to bring to attention the end of March was pretty sad. The final goodbyes to two wonderful Elk Grove community members and a great supporter of our school district. It's Mr. John Zender and Mr. Roy Herberger that I attended their services. I was particularly touched by at Roy Herberger's services to see four of our superintendents that were there, and I had the pleasure of working with as well too. Mr. Bob Trigg, Mr. Dave Gordon, Dr. Stephen Ladd, and our current superintendent Chris Hoffman. It just shows you the impact that Mr. Herberger had on our school district, our superintendents here. And there was just a host of other educators that were there and some just really nice comments. And it was real serve. I really enjoyed the services there. And Mr. Herberger will certainly be really missed, if I can say the least. He was a friend of mine as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Moving on this side, any other items from the floor? Ms. Allen?
Just a point of reference, or just to acknowledge, the March for Our Lives was almost 2 weeks, a week and a half ago. Just wanted to recognize all of the students and teachers that participated. Of all of the student speakers that were featured, and I want to say there was about 7 or 8 student speakers. 3 of them were from our district, and all 3 being from Cosumnes Oaks High School, who did an excellent job and were actually able to relate that horrific lockdown and what this means to them, and personalize their stories. So I just wanted to recognize CEO's participation.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. I'm going to give just a couple of really reminders, I guess, to my colleagues and to members of the public about ongoing work that's going on that will be coming to the board. So I believe Mr. Fortino had raised the issue about how to improve the student voice and the input that the board receives from students. Mr. Hoffman and I are doing a lot of work on that front, and we are preparing to bring something back to the board for consideration and perhaps further guidance in that work. So I just wanted to let you know that that work is ongoing, and I look forward to bringing that back to you so that we can flesh that out a little bit more. Another important piece of work that's ongoing is the board policy on school safety roles and responsibilities. We don't really have a name for it yet, but that is one of the more urgent pieces of work that's coming out of, I guess, everything we've been learning since December. So just wanted to let you colleagues know that we are developing that. Obviously, legal counsel is involved with that. We will be soliciting input from our principals on that. It will be coming back to us, and then a final review from legal before it comes to the board for approval. So anything to add on that? Did I get it wrong?
Button on. Looks like it goes screech in the back. So it's exactly right. I actually just checked in with Karen Resendiz today in my one-on-one, and they're putting some finishing touches on the initial piece, so we should have that in the next couple of days. We meet with principals next week, and we have a subgroup of folks that are interested in being part of it, so you're spot on.
Okay, excellent. So seeing no more items from the floor, I want to adjourn today's meeting in memory of Stephon Clark. He wasn't one of our students, but his killing has affected not just folks in Sacramento, it's affected folks in our own community, and I think it's a poignant reminder about what our mission is and the way that we want to change the world. So I'm adjourning tonight's meeting in memory of Stephon Clark.